2017, we lost one of the most talented vocalists the Shores have ever produced. There are many great vocalists we know, obviously, but there hasn't been anybody quite like John, who had this unique ability to provide this emotive delivery, the ability to convey very deep emotions with that unique voice. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think John was completely original. He had a very, very powerful top range, but also he had this deep baritone range that he could pull on. And he's one of the few vocalists, I think, that could be convincing in that top register as well as the bottom register. But I mean, it was a very endearing voice. It would draw people in, and as you say, very emotive voice. And that is not just what John was. I mean, in terms of his abilities, was not just his amazing vocal talent, but obviously, he was an iconic bass guitarist as well, and an incredible songwriter. So really, for me, John had it all. So I was very, very fortunate to be in a position where I got to work with him for a number of years.
Your first meeting with him, Brian Lane's office, the Asia manager at the time. What were your first impressions? Because you're coming from different backgrounds. So what was it like when you first met?
I think initially we hit it off socially, and he said, did you fancy a drink? Let's go to the pub. And it was the first time I met him. So, and his girlfriend, who then became his wife, was working in the office at the time, and we sloped off, and we really had a good rapport. And I think the fact that we both came from similar backgrounds, we were brought up on church music, and we were born outside of London, so it was a bonding really. And I think that when we started to when the formation of Asia was finalised, we had Steve and Carl. I think that John and I felt very close bonds as writers, that because we, as I say, we come from similar backgrounds, and that was very, we just hit it off straight away.
John Kalodner at the time, the new A&R whiz from Geffen, if he'd have had his way, Robert Fleischman would have had a stay with Asia. He was with Journey for a very short time. So I didn't know that. I only came across that not that long ago. So what was it like at the time? I mean, was he just saying, listen, this is the guy for you? Well, and then you were saying, no. We think John is the man for us.
I think Kalodner's original idea was that the super group was going to be along the lines of Yes. So it was going to be a 5-piece. And so Kalodner was throwing not just Robert Fleischman, but Trevor Rabin came over, Roy Wood even. So we were looking at, at that time.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we were looking at that time as a 5-piece, and I think as time went by, John became more and more the focal point and more the vocalist, and then in the end we turned around and said, look, we've got it here. Why are we looking at outside? And so that was at the point then when we settled on a 4-piece, and from that point on, I think everyone was really comfortable with certainly with John, because he was not only was he writing the songs, but he was singing them, and I think that it's very difficult for vocalists sometimes to be committed to music that they've not been a part of writing, and I think that certainly in John's case, it was very much a story of the fact that it was a complete extension of him, and so it was very, very natural, I think, for the band to say to John, well, you're the guy that's been singing all through these rehearsals we've been having, and why don't we just stick with that? And so that was it. Once we decided on that, it was this is Asia, it's a 4-piece, and we're getting on with it.
Both you and John, as you just said, have grown up around choral music. I mean, his brother was a choir master and a church organist, and that played into these huge, emotionally charged choruses, isn't it? And it's not until you say that, when you go back, as I did yesterday and the day before, I was going back listening to all sorts of it again. Yeah, I remember being sat in church on a Sunday, and you had these huge choruses and these hymns, and you can see where the crossover came.
That's absolutely right. I think that my dad was a church organist, and I grew up singing in choirs, so it was almost in both of our DNAs, and I think that that's one of the reasons why John had not really had the opportunity, I think, in King Crimson or UK to manifest that sort of arrangement of vocal arrangements. And I think when we collided, that's when we really started to think about these big anthemic choruses that were obviously influenced by church music. But and so I think with my schooling at from music college, with the actual notation and the arrangements of putting these huge vocal blocks together, I think that John and I really worked very hard on saying, well, this is the line that he's going to sing, and then the next one, and then maybe I'll do a top one on, and we had Steve to do some of the lower register stuff. So we had this whole big block, and it really, I think it actually influenced our songwriting as well, because we wanted to go for those big choruses, and I think that that's why we got this tag of being this arena rock type supergroup, even though at that point we hadn't finished the album, or we'd not released the album. But I think that was one of the hallmarks of the success of Asia. Not so much, I mean, we're obviously all talented instrumentalists, Carl's drumming and Steve's wild guitar playing, and John's bass and my keyboards. We had all that as well, but at the same time, I think that John and I were very much focused on getting the songs and the melodies across, and so that's really how Asia formed. It had that, it had the progressive rock players, but at the same time, it was a different outing for everybody, I think, because obviously Steve had been through the big thing in the 70s, as had Carl and John to a great degree. I mean, not so much myself, because at the time those guys were touring America and doing all of that. I was doing session work and writing jingles and that kind of thing. So I had a slightly different 70s background, because I guess I was a couple of years younger than the other guys. But I think that John really saw me as a talisman in the whole thing, and a catalyst to the way that he wanted to approach music.
The first track of, and I'll use a quote here, substance that you put together was Soul Survivor. Now, there was an interesting little aside around that, and it says while you're in composition mode, the pair of you, on in the background, you got televisions, and you got Borg and McEnroe in the Wimbledon final going on in the background, and because you both loved sport as well.
That's right. I think that's another reason why John and I got so close, because we had very similar tastes and stuff, and and we had a great sense of humour between us. So the songwriting side of things was really it was just an extra thing that we were doing. But I think that we took it very seriously, of course, but it was a very natural thing, and these things happen very quickly. So Soul Survivor, I think, definitely was inspired by the TV being on in the background, and I think we were writing maybe the verses at the time for Soul Survivor, and John came up with with these great lyrics that reflected what we were experiencing at the time.
Yeah, that was one of the great underappreciated talents that he had, was his use of vocabulary, the use of words and bringing things together to create these poignant and emotionally crafted songs. Do you think people give him enough credit for that, or should he be given more credit for that?
Well, I think if you listen to a lot of John's lyrics, and not just the ones off the first album, but or the second album, but some of the latter lyrics, when we did the reunion albums, I think John was totally committed, and I think that when you hear a vocalist that's so committed in their own presentation, it's an infectious thing. You can't get away from it, and I think there was a song called Holy War off the Omega album, and he's talking about trebuchet and
Yeah.
things that you wouldn't. There's not your love story songs. These are deep things that we go back to history, and John was very, very, very good at that. I mean, he was a keen crossword man, so he used to do the Telegraph crossword every morning, and so a very educated man, and I think that to be able to put words like that into into a song and be convinced and convicted in the presentation of it, it's hard to avoid that, because you just say, well, I believe it. Whatever he's singing about, you're going to believe, because it's so convincing and it has so much conviction. And that's one of John's greatest skills, which maybe some people, did not really grasp, I think, at the time. But I think when you reflect on the music that we wrote together, it's amazing what John was capable of. And certainly, when I was going back to when we were talking about John's vocal range, there was a song also off that album called "There Was a Time," and John starts with this really low, creamy baritone, and then the next verse he goes up the octave and sings the same line with all power. So that versatility is something that I think sets him aside from many, many other vocalists that he was capable of pulling off virtually anything.
When you completed that album, you and John have written 6 of the 9 tracks, or on 6 of the 9 tracks. John is on everyone rather, including that bonus track that appeared right away. Heat of the Moment. This was an interesting story. Heat of the Moment was obviously the most iconic song almost of the decade, I would have thought. But it was the last song to get on that. Was there ever a danger when you'd completed that song that you thought, no, we'll leave that one. We won't bother. Was there any danger of that ever happening, or was it that was obviously going to be on there?
I think that by the time we were putting it together, I think that originally the lead-off song was going to be "Only Time Will Tell," which was a powerful song in a way. But I think that John felt, and maybe we were being pushed a little bit by Kalodner as well, that maybe there was something else in the tank that we hadn't was undiscovered. And so John had this little idea that he said, I've got this little country song, and I said, well, that sounds a bit weird, he said, yeah, it's and it was 3/4, and it had this feel, but it was a chorus, it was the heat of the moment. And I said, well, that's great. I said, but, maybe we need to straighten that out a bit. Maybe we need to, keep it more regular. And I think that when we were writing the verses, I said to John, well, this verse, it's not in a normal time signature, because you've got you've got the riff, the guitar riff, and then you've got the sort of Phil Spector doom 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 baffing on the drums. So it was very much a case of well, this is different, and I think that that we really worked hard on that, because again, with that great anthemic chorus coming in, it's hard to run away from it, and so I remember at the time we'd got the verses, we'd got the choruses, we were very, very keen on the intro being that power guitar, and I think Steve was a little bit reluctant at first because it's not really his style, you know. And that was a bit of sort of, I suppose, something that was a bit alien to him, you know, to play a power guitar intro like that. But I think we pushed for it, and eventually Steve said, "Okay, I'll do it on." And he did it on different guitars, and it came out sounding brilliant. So when we had those elements, but we didn't really have the middle section. And then I think John and I sat down one afternoon, probably watching sport again or something, and we came up with the whole middle section with the the R's and the breakdowns and all that kind of stuff. So it was something that by the time we went into the studio to do it, it had only been written maybe a couple of weeks before we actually went in the studio. Everything else was really heavily rehearsed. You know, we had Wildest Dreams and the Shuffle for Time Again. So we had all of those really heavily rehearsed. I mean, a lot of people didn't give us credit at the time because they thought, this band's just been put together on a test bench, you know, with the big record executives. They've assembled this band, the super group kind of thing. But I mean, we didn't really see it like that because I think we felt that we needed to get it really well together, and we rehearsed for I think up to about 6 months. So you imagine that was at the time when we had some of these people coming over to audition, and about halfway through, that's when we decided that's it, we're done. You know, we've got what we want here. So people don't really give us credit for that. You know, it was a lot of hard work. There was a lot of research went into it from our angle. When we went in the studio, we were pretty well prepared for it.
The record company bosses, the reaction was, you wonder what they were listening to, and the quote was something like, "Quite honestly, we find the cover of the album a bit dark. The logo is ugly, and frankly, there are no singles on it."
Yeah, that's the sort.
You wonder whether or not they were suffering from tone deafness.
Well, I think by the time they had a good marketing campaign, and I'll give them that. But they had no idea about how it was going to be received, because of course we were the first band on Geffen Records, and they were a new label, so they didn't. They were just really, Geffen was getting his foot in the door, so to speak, in terms of his own label, and I think that when it first went out and it went out to the stations, the response was so incredible. It went on 250 stations overnight. And it wasn't just Heat of the Moment that was being played; it was all 3 or 4 tracks deep. Soul Survivor was there, Only Time Will Tell, Wildest Dreams, Time Again. They were all on maximum rotation and rock radio. So I think that by that time, that's when they really started throwing money at us, or throwing money at the project as it was at the time, and of course it just went exploded and just went snowballed, went up and up. I mean, I do remember that. I think I might have put this in the book, but I remember John and I we were driving somewhere in America, and it was just after the album had come out, and we were listening to one station, and we had Hit the Moment. And I said, "Oh, we'll just change that. We know that one, And then we switched to another station, and Wildest Dreams was on, and another station, Soul Survivor. So, and that's just in one city. So you can imagine the level of excitement that we all had, and the fact that the record label were significantly excited by it, to say the least. And I mean, it was a good run. No, I wasn't that. I mean, you never know when you release an album. You don't know whether it's going to be commercially successful or not. And I certainly thought that we'd done it as well as we could, but I didn't have any, none of us had any idea about how successful it was going to be, certainly in terms of its commercial value. But, I think that we started off fairly, with the tour, we started off fairly modestly. I mean, I think it was sold largely on the,
yeah, it seems you were doing college halls.
We were doing colleges, yeah, but it was sold largely on the people that were in the bands rather than, the music at the time, because before the album came out, the tour had already been booked. So, I think that was more to do with the fact that, Carl Palmer was still a big name, Steve was a big name, John was a pretty big name. Not so much myself, obviously, because, although I'd been in Yes prior to that, that's really how it was sold, as this band of 70s musicians have come together and they've got something new to project. But of course, when the album started to kick in, and I mean, it was just flying up the charts and being played everywhere, and became very much the young college students' album of the year in many ways. That's when, at that time, we did the first tour and we fulfilled all the college dates, and then of course, that's when the big guns came in and said, right, we'll book this arena here, we'll book that one there, we'll put, Philadelphia Spectrum, 20,000 people a night, Jones Beach Arena, 25,000 people, just went literally through the ceiling. So when we came out for the second leg of the tour, we'd elevated from playing, 1,500, 2,000 seater college halls to, into the arenas that were sold out, multiple dates. I think we did one at Detroit, which was five nights in a row, and all sold out. So it was a meteoric rise, if you like, for Asia, particularly on that first tour.
You remained friends with John throughout the 80s. We know the story of the departure and whatever, but you both remained friends, and you came back together again to work years later with Icon, and then this paving the way for that Asia reunion. And I was thinking, actually, if you went back again and you had the debut album, if you then just sort of airdropped what you produced on the reunion back to maybe after Don't Cry, it would have been fabulous. You'd have been up there for the decade, I would have thought, because those albums you did on that reunion, Phoenix, Omega, Triple X, Gravitas, had tracks on there. There was stuff on there that was as good as anything that had come before. And I'm thinking about, Never Again, Valkyrie, and Finger on the Trigger, Holy War. I mean, there was some incredible songs there.
Yeah, I think that it's hard to look back in hindsight, and I think that, the fact that Asia came together so quickly and was so successful so quickly, we didn't really have anywhere to go with it. With that first album was so huge. It was the biggest selling album, in the world that year. So you've got it's very hard to know where to go from there. And I think that was one of the things that, had the progress been slower and we'd started lower down, the scale, as it were, I think the longevity of the band would have been far greater, but as we started so high, there was only one way you can go. If you're at the very top of the tree, there's only one way you can go. And I think that, when we did the next album, Alpha, by that time, it wasn't quite as well received. I mean, it still sold 3 million copies, which is, had that been what would sell the first album, which ended up selling over 10 million, if it had been a more gradual rise, then I think that we'd have had a lot more longevity. But as I say, it's all hindsight, And I think that the fact that we had that opportunity to come back, in 2005, 2006, there was a feeling that there was a lot of unfinished business. And I think that when we got together again, I started writing with John again, we still had that, we had a great rapport. John would come, I live in Wales and he lived in Bournemouth. So we'd literally, I'd go down to his place and he'd still have the old piano, that we'd written Heat of the Moment on and Soul Survivor. And we'd crack the old piano out and it would be the same thing, he's got this idea, I've got that idea. We put them together and then I'd go home and we'd have maybe a couple of songs in an afternoon, And that's how natural it was for us that it was not a great effort to put our music together and make it work.
The tracks that you were working on around the time when he passed away were heading toward another Asia album. I understand. I mean, you can correct me if that's wrong. Is there work to be done on those that could end up with the possibility of it being released?
There's the formative ideas there, but unfortunately, because John was quite was very ill at the time, we never really got to to establish the top lines, that or that a lot of lyrics that John would normally come up with. So they're very sketchy, but I'm hoping that sometime I will be able to look at those sketches and maybe make something out of them, that John would have possibly appreciated. But as I say, it's a difficult thing because I wouldn't want to throw something out there that he wouldn't have liked or would be unfinished, if you like. So it's one of those things that's it's there in my mind, and I know all the bits and pieces that we had, but whether or not I could actually craft something out of it, I'm not sure.
As you'll hear on this really expansive box set, it's a great box set, which looks back over the course of his career. I mean, we know that he was on the cusp, first off with that album Danger Money by UK. Kalodner's quote at the time was, "It's close, but no cigar." Then you go on and listen to, you get to listen to the album Crossfire, which is in the box set, which is one of the first album that he did afterwards, which I was really surprised of. Obviously, I mean, there's so much music out there, you can't ever listen to everything. But when you put that on, I thought, God, how come I never heard that before? Because it had all that sound of Toto and a little bit of Journey, and you listen to it and you think, this is Baby Asia. This is, it was a great album, and this box set is stuffed full of stuff like that.
Yeah, because I think John was just looking for something, and so a lot of that stuff is he's dipping his toe in the water, because he, as much as he's was very proud of the King Crimson stuff that he did, he was looking for something, I think, that was maybe something more mainstream, something more accessible, because John, he wanted to be a rock star, and I think that, just being, King Crimson, it was not, you were not necessarily front line, progressive music doesn't really have that, the guy in front of the stage giving it all that, and I think that with John, he was there, he was a great looking guy, he had photogenic, so he had the full package, and I think that maybe, that's what he was looking for. When the opportunity to do Asia came along, that was really, for him, that was the thing, that was him, that's what he'd been striving for.
Just a few words on Yes. You've come back off what was a hugely successful tour. Now, I'm just going to read you a few things here. And these were the reviews. Watching the band on the stage was like a time walk back to the 70s. The energy on stage was amazing to watch. Yes offer a masterful musical interplay. Downes' organ solos were dramatic. Yes add to legacy. What was it? A mesmerizing concert experience that will transport you and your awareness to a realm of musical brilliance. I mean, these were some of the quotes from some of the reviews that I saw. So how does it feel when you, after all the years that you've been in the business, that people are still turned on and tuned in to seeing you take to the stage every night? They can't get enough of it.
Well, I think that that live music's something that, you know, is never going to go away. And I think that whatever age you are, whatever music you're into, it's the event of going to see something live is the excitement factor. You know, it's like going to watch a live football match. You know, it's a totally different atmosphere from watching it on the TV. So I think that you know, it's something that people will always hopefully strive to see it. Particularly, I think in the days now of so much reality stuff on television and a lot of manufactured music. I think that you know, the fact that people go out and they see people grappling with their instruments and making music together, and the you know, the camaraderie and the connections between all the musicians on stage, I think it's a very important thing, and I think people relate to that, and they get off on it. And as I say, not just about seeing a band like Yes, but you know, seeing any kind of live music is something that hopefully will be around for many decades to come.
And so the classic tales of Yes, is the set going to differ for Europe to what you played over in the US?
I think it will be largely the same because when we put a set together like this one, which is, you know, it's a very different from the stuff that you know, from previous set lists. So it takes a lot of not just rehearsal, but a lot of thought that goes into making it work as a show. And I think that the fact that we've got that show now pretty much nailed, and we haven't been to Europe with it, I think that that's one thing that I think that, you know, the fans will probably want to see something different, and that's what we're throwing up. You know, you know, Yes has always been, certainly since I've been back in the band, we've really challenged the set list. You know, we've gone through a lot of the earlier albums, some of the much deeper tracks, pulled those out that, you know, never been done before. So it's good to keep it fresh, I think. You know, I mean, some bands go out and they play exactly the same set for years on end, but I think with Yes, I think we've definitely tried to dish up something different every time, and hopefully the fans will really respond to this set, which we are, you know, as I say, we're looking forward to taking to Europe and also into Japan in September. So we've got yet another year lined up of 2024 of pretty much going, you know, everywhere that we want to go. So it's a good time for the band, and of course we're working on another album as well now. We've got two recent albums that we've done, The Quest and Mirror to the Sky, which came out earlier this year. So there's a lot of activity in the Yes camp, and I think that keeps us all fresh. You know, we've got, obviously, you know, we sadly lost Alan last year, which was, you know, another personal blow for me because, you know, I was very good friends with Alan, and, you know, ironically, him and John were born 2 days apart. So, again, you know, he's a guy from the north of England. So, you know, it's just sad to lose people like that, you know, I've had a close relationship with, and, you know, not just musically, but people who were, you know, considered to be great friends as well.
You mentioned the new music there. How important is new music to you and the rest of the band now? As you said, Mirror in the Sky, the Quest a couple of years before, the 23rd studio album, again, continued to be exceedingly well received. One of the quotes, more aggressive, muscular sound, yes, return to a golden era of creativity. So people clearly, do take to the new music. How is it with you? How important is creating new music?
I think it keeps everyone fresh. I think that if you look at some bands that just literally they're almost sort of tribute acts within themselves because they just want to play the hits, and there's nothing wrong with that. A band like Foreigner, for instance, don't even attempt to write any new music. They just go out and they play, however many hits they've had, gazillion hits. That's okay for them. But I think for us, it's something that keeps us occupied. It keeps the momentum going. I think it keeps the fans interested as well, because I don't think that, obviously we play roundabout every show, and the fans will turn around and go, I've heard roundabout 500 times, live. But it's expected that we do something like that, and there's nothing wrong with that. But to put in a couple of songs from new material, I think it keeps it fresh, it keeps it relevant, it keeps it current, and so that's the reason why we do it. And I think that we get off on it. If you're a composer and you enjoy writing music, I think you're not just going to stop and say, well, I'm gonna play Video Killed the Radio Star for the rest of my life, and that's it. I just want to, you want to get on and do new stuff, and I think that's all part of being a creative musician.
But by the way, I mean, you've talked about obviously the Yes and Asia and everything. Did the thought ever cross your mind to go back and revisit the Buggles era, even if it was just for fun?
Well,
have you ever thought about that? I mean, I know the two of you are still in contact.
Yeah, we're still in contact. I think if the time ever comes, I mean, Trevor's always crazy busy, doing various productions and things like that. So the chances of us getting a big window are fairly unlikely. But when I speak to him, we never discount the possibility of going out and doing a few shows here and there, or we've got a couple of tracks, unreleased tracks that we've worked on over the years. So yeah, I mean, I don't think it's never off the table, put it that way. And I think that Trev's had an amazing career, as you know, as a producer, and I've always got, I think, a soft spot for each other, because that I know how hard we worked putting the Buggles together, and we were a couple of unknown guys, from the north of England. So, you never really forget that connection, and so, and I think that when Trevor wrote his book, he made mention of that once we were sort of nobodies, if you like, and then all of a sudden we managed to get off on these incredible careers. And certainly, my own career, I give a lot of credit to all that work with Trevor, and I think he feels the same way to me, that we fed off each other, and it was, we made a success out of something that went on to do two completely different careers, but at the same time, we were successful outside of what we started with the Buggles.
Last question then. You've had this amazing career. I mean, what you've achieved, you maybe wouldn't have thought in your wildest of dreams you would have got close to. Is there anything left that you would like to achieve that you haven't done before? Something that you think, I'd love to work with them, or I just want to do that, and that's the one thing? Or have you done it all?
Well, I think you never turn your back on the fact that there might be one more in you. What's another hit record. or something like that. You know, that never really leaves you. And, you know, I don't actually write necessarily to try and gain any commercial recognition, because, you know, I've done that and I've been there and I've got the T-shirt on that. So I don't feel that I need to strive. But at the same time, you know, for sort of more recognition or whatever. But at the same time, I think that it's always down to, you know, getting satisfaction out of making music, and that's something that, you know, whoever it might be, whoever I might work with, as long as it's a satisfying thing, and you come home after working on a track, or you know, whether you've recorded some parts, if you come out at the end of the day and you think, wow, you know, I achieved something there, you know, or I put a great keyboard part on something, or you know, a nice melody came up, you know, anything like that. I think that's all part and parcel of. I don't really want to strive to do anything other than to continue to get that buzz, you know, when you come out the studio and you're on a high, because you whether, as I say, whether or not it achieves commercial recognition's not really relevant, because if you've got the buzz out of it, then, you know, someone else is probably going to get the buzz out of it as well. And I think, you know, when I've been working with Chris Braid on the Downes Braid Association stuff, it's very rewarding, and it's almost in a way that it was like with John when I was doing the Icon stuff. You know, we were just really writing for ourselves, and hopefully other people will get off of it, as they did. You know, other people found great solace in some of the materials, found excitement in the material. So I think that, you know, as John always used to say, when he was asked what's it like to be writing, he'd say, well, that's what we do. You know, we're musicians. That's what we do. We make music. You know, and that's just about as simple as I can make it.